Okay, so I was looking up your bio and I saw that your introduction to wheelchair basketball was through your uncle who had polio. I mean, when you were growing up, was he a massive influence on you?
I mean, yeah, that's how I got introduced to the sport was through my uncle. I was born and raised outside of Chicago. My uncle played for the Chicago Wheelchair Bulls. He coached a women's team outside of Chicago. It was the RSC Express, and I think they've kind of changed names a few times where they're now the Chicago Sky. But yeah, for me, I was always an active kid, running around, playing outside with my friends, and wheelchair basketball was just something different than what I was used to, and going to his practices and going to his games and helping out. It was just something that over time I fell in love with. So very fortunate. My uncle's name is Jim Taylor. He was the one that first got me involved in wheelchair basketball, and it's spanned my 25 plus year coaching career that I've been fortunate to have at this point.
I mean, what was it about wheelchair basketball that drew you into the sport?
At first it was just jumping in a wheelchair and being able to push around and not having to run and tire out your legs at all. It was, that was a little bit different at first, but then as I really got into it and got more on the coaching side of things, it was learning the strategy of the game, which is different than the able body game, where on the able body game, one guy can really take a game over and run past everyone and create their own shots and score 100 points or whatever it is. We're in wheelchair basketball. It's more team focused and being able to use your teammates, play with your teammates, set picks for each other, where it's not necessarily one guy that's going to completely take a game over. While that does happen from time to time, there's more of a team game to it and more strategy behind it. I've really enjoyed the strategy part of it. The coaching aspect of it, working with athletes, whether they're Paralympic athletes or student athletes here at Auburn. I think it doesn't really matter what the sport is. If you enjoy coaching, you enjoy developing relationships and watching people grow in their individual skills, you can coach any sport. But for me, it was the strategic side of things in wheelchair basketball that really drew me in.
I have rather unintentionally started a bit of an adaptive sport series on this podcast recently. I've talked to athletes and coaches from wheelchair rugby and wheelchair handball, and I mean that's how I got in contact with you. Can you explain to me the difference in classification between
Yeah,
wheelchair rugby and wheelchair basketball and wheelchair handball? Because they're all
yeah.
slightly different.
Well, before I do that, congratulations to you. You are at the front of this Paralympic wave that hopefully will continue on. We've seen a lot of great movement away from men's sports, movement in women's sports. Hopefully, we start seeing some additional movement in Paralympic sports. And, hopefully, Paris is just the start of that as we lead into LA in 2028. So the fact that you've had quad rugby players and wheelchair handball players, staffs on it as well. It means that you're helping us get the word out there about adapted athletics and Paralympic athletics. So thank you very much for that.
Oh my
Um,
gosh, yeah,
but
like thank you.
but in Paralympic sports or adapted sports, there are classifications based off of individuals' disabilities. So in wheelchair basketball, the more disabled you are, the lower your classification point. The less disabled you are, the higher your classification point. It's the same in those other sports as well, in handball and in rugby. And I don't know the full details of those sports as well as I know basketball. But for basketball, it's meant to try to make it an even playing field for anyone that has a disability. Because you could look at it and say, hey, why don't you just play your five tallest guys? Or, if they're all amputees, why don't you just play five amputees out there and just dominate everybody? But wheelchair basketball and the other sports are set up so that way it levels the playing field. So someone that has a high spinal cord injury and has less function, the lowest they can be in basketball is a classification 1.0. The highest in basketball is a classification of 4.5. And then everybody goes up within half point increments. And then for basketball, we can't play any more than 14 points on the floor at any given time. So aside from being good at basketball tactics. I have to be pretty good or quick with math on the sideline when it comes to doing different substitutions. And handball is the same way. They are 1 point up to 4 point with I think it's full point increments in between. And then quad rugby. Ooh, uh, my quad rugby friends are going to bash me for this, but I think they start at a 1.0 or maybe even a little bit lower than that, and they go up to 3 points. And I'm not sure how many points they can play out there on the floor. But for us, for basketball, yes, we're looking at different classifications of players. We're looking at their skill level, but then we're also looking at who plays well together based off of those different levels of classification. So, we've had some pretty good success with the U.S. men's team recently. And it's really been kind of our mid-pointers, our 2.5s, our 3.0s, and our 3.5s that have allowed us to be successful. And with your strength in those numbers, you can really kind of play with the different lineups that you have. So, yeah, classification is huge in adapted athletics. And even when you get into, Paralympic swimming or Paralympic track and field, I couldn't even begin to explain those classifications to you because there's push sports in track and field, there's amputees in track and field, there's blind runners in track and field. So there's the number of classifications is a whole lot bigger than what we deal with in wheelchair basketball.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because like I was saying, I kind of unintentionally started a Paralympic series, but I have learned so much about adaptive athletics just by like the few interviews that I've done so far. And there are like some pretty sizable differences, but I have also interviewed specifically wheelchair sports as opposed to like track and field or swimming. So it's interesting to see the delineation of classification metrics between these wheelchair sports. Um, how have the majority of your athletes gotten their disabilities? Are they congenital? Are they like have they gotten into accidents? I mean, what's kind of the demographic of your athlete pool?
Yeah, I mean they're kind of all over the place. We've got a number that have acquired their disability at birth, whether it's a birth defect, whether it's spina bifida, and then several that have acquired their disabilities after their birth or later in life. Some cancer survivors that I've coached on both the team here at Auburn and the national team. And I think once you get into adapted athletics, or you start talking to people in adapted athletics, you hear all the different stories. One of the guys on my U.S. team lost his leg as a result of a train accident. He and his friends were climbing over a train that was stopped on the tracks to try to get to the other side. The train started up, and that jerking motion forced him off. He fell on the track. It ran over his leg. He lost his leg that way. And then I've coached, and you have that kind of reaction, and you look at my reaction, which is like, this is something I hear every day. But yeah, I mean, you've got car accidents that people have become paralyzed because of that. There's some quad rugby players that became quadriplegic because of car accidents. But yeah, you hear different stories. I've had a couple that have been motocross accidents. I had one athlete a long time ago that got run over by a lawnmower, fell off of her father's lap while he was mowing the lawn, and ran her over by accident. Had another one that was boating, fell out of the boat and got hit by the propeller, lost his leg and severed his spinal cord. So, I mean, yes, there's traumatic accidents that happen that lead to their disability, but there are several others that are born with their disability, and uh, you know they all turn into great people. They all turn into very competitive athletes from what I've had the opportunity to work with. But yeah, it's not always the same path for everybody. Everyone's got kind of a different way to how they acquired or was born with their disability, and then how they found the sport that they eventually fell in love with.
Yeah, I mean, when I was talking to Ford about his experience with handball, I asked him, like, when you were forming this club, like, where were you sourcing your athletes from? I mean, did they have handball experience? And he was like, no, not at all.
Yeah.
I mean, they were coming from different wheelchair sports, wheelchair tennis, wheelchair football, wheelchair basketball. Where are you sourcing your athletes from?
Yeah, I mean, Fortunately, basketball is a little more popular than handball is. So, when from an Auburn standpoint, there's a junior wheelchair basketball division. So we do a lot of our recruiting within the junior division, whether that's going out to tournaments, talking to kids and parents and recruiting them that way, whether it's having them come to our summer camp that we host every summer, um, or it also helps that I'm the head coach of the U.S. national team. So there's kids that know who I am because of my position there, and they reach out to me from that standpoint. So we're fortunate from an Auburn standpoint that we go out there and recruit kids that play wheelchair basketball, or we have them reach out to us. From a U.S. standpoint, we're sourcing our athletes from the larger pool of wheelchair basketball players from around the country. We compete within here in the States, we compete within the National Wheelchair Basketball Association, which is made up of I think we're up to almost 200 teams across the country, spread across a number of different divisions. There's two or three different youth divisions or junior divisions. There's men's collegiate, there's women's collegiate. Then you get into kind of the post collegiate or the adult leagues, and there's three different leagues on the men's side. There's a women's only division, and then we have a military only division as well. So there's several hundreds of players that play across the country, and a lot of our top players from the States play professionally overseas, whether that's in Spain or Germany, Italy, France. They're all over in Europe playing professionally. So when we do our tryouts for the U.S. team, it's an open tryout. Well, it's an open application. People send in their application with video, and we review all that stuff, and then we invite a select few to come to tryouts, and we compare the team down from there.
That's incredible. Let's take a step back and talk about your rise through the coaching rankings. When you were at the University of Illinois, did you foresee this becoming such a massive part of your life when you were assistant coaching?
I think at the time it was more of a dream than anything else. The wheelchair basketball world is a very small world. Um, there's currently 11 collegiate programs that have a competitive wheelchair basketball team. And when I was doing my undergrad, it wasn't even 11. I think it was like maybe eight teams. So you look at that and you go, man, I mean, that's a hard field to crack into is being the head coach of a college program, um, let alone the career path that it's led me on to take over as head coach of the U.S. team. Um, but while at Illinois, I had the opportunity there to work under Mike Frogley, who is one of the best coaches for wheelchair basketball. He introduced me to Ron Likens, who is, in my opinion, the best wheelchair basketball coach of all time. And I had the opportunity to work alongside both of those guys. I worked with Mike at Illinois, and then I worked with Ron on the U.S. level. I started working with Ron in 2002, 2001, and would just go in and volunteer, similar to kind of what I did getting started at Illinois, where I would just go and volunteer and help out however I could. Um, and worked with that team up until 2004 when they jumped on the jet to head over to Athens to win the first gold for the U.S. women. I jumped on a plane back to Central Illinois to go finish up my education. And then it was after 2004 that Ron hired me as an assistant coach with the women. Um, and at that point, I was working, just finishing up my education, and it was like, okay, well, like this is something that I'd like to make a career out of. But again, uh, making a living out of coaching wheelchair basketball is very difficult to do. So after I graduated from Illinois, um, I didn't coach at the college level anymore. My wife and I moved out to Arizona. I started working a warehouse job out there. Still volunteered coach for a team in Phoenix. But it was kind of like more like a side gig than anything else. And then, continue to work with the U.S. team, which was phenomenal. And then eventually Auburn called me when they were looking to hire a coach full time and um, kind of gauge my interest in it. And of course, I was excited and over the moon about the opportunity to get back to coaching full time and had a great conversation with my wife, and she was very supportive of it. And one thing led to another, and now I've been down here at Auburn for over 8 years, just starting my ninth year with the team. So I think if you would have asked me 20 years ago, 25 years ago, if this is where I would have seen myself coaching wheelchair basketball full time, having been a part of now four Paralympic gold medals winning teams, I would have said, yeah, not a chance. But it's working with the right people. It was the t determination to make sure that I saw my dreams through that allowed me to get to the spot that I am today. And I think if I hadn't have continued to push and wouldn't have had the support, not just from my wife, but from the other coaches and athletes that I've worked with, I wouldn't be in the position I am today. And I still probably be a warehouse manager for somebody somewhere across the country. So just very thankful for the people that helped get me to where I am today.
Yeah, I mean, talking about Ron specifically and this network that of coaches that are influential to the sport, but also deeply influential to your coaching ascension. What did it mean to work under Ron for that long and kind of adapt as an assistant coach under his coaching?
Well, I mean, the knowledge that he has for the game is I don't know if I'll ever get to that point. I mean, he's just so knowledgeable about the game and he's so generous with his time and wanting to share his knowledge and ex his experience with other people to allow the sport to continue to grow and to continue to push. And yeah, I sat alongside of him for 12 years as an assistant coach, four with the women and eight plus one with the men, that plus one being the COVID year. Um, and just being able to watch the best do it day in and day out was great to do, and being able to push back on him and provide him my thoughts and my feedback and hear his thoughts and the decisions that he would make. I consider him a mentor. I consider him one of my closest friends, someone that I can bounce things off of. So it was incredible working with him for as long as I have, and also knowing that over the last 3 or 4 years, as I've been the head coach of the U.S. team, knowing that I've got his support and that I can call him at any time and bounce anything off of him because he's experienced just about everything that we've experienced. Now, he hasn't been part of winning three consecutive gold medals that, we were able to do that. Um, but it just knowing that I have him in my corner is allowed me to continue to grow and be successful with the U.S. team. And the last thing you want to do is let somebody like that down. So while he tells me that there's no pressure, there's definitely pressure to try to continue the traditions that he helped establish for the U.S. program. There's a lot of pressure to make sure that you continue that.
Well, I mean, I feel like three consecutive Paralympic medals is certainly not letting him down.
Well, for sure. After we won that last game, it was there's a lot of pride in that moment. Pride for my current staff, pride for the guys that were on the team, but and then also pride knowing that we were able to continue the direction that Ron helped set, but also continue in the direction that some of the other athletes that were on the team had helped set. The Matt Scotts that were part of the first two, Josh Turek, who was part of the first two guys that have been influential in that program in general, is making sure that even though they made the decision to retire and they're supporting us a different way, that the program was still in good hands and moving in the direction that we all saw it going.
I mean, I was just doing the math right there. There are middle schoolers that have never known the US Paralympic team not as gold medalists.
I mean, that's awesome. But and the thing is, like, that success isn't just on the men's side. Like, we've had the same sort of success on the women's side for almost longer, right? I mean, Ron coached the team in 2004 and 2008. They both won the gold medal there. We won the gold medal in 2016. They medaled in 2020. And then this past year, they picked up the silver in 2024. So while the men's team has had success from a wheelchair basketball standpoint, we've had success here in the United States. And if you look at both programs, it all falls back to one man, and that's Ron Likens and really the direction that he helped set for the women back in 2004. And then when he came over to the men's team in 2013, it was that same direction. I mean, we had this talk with the men's team when we were in Santiago last year for the Parapans and then also for the Paralympics here. We've got guys on that team a couple of them in particular, that they've been on the U.S. men's team now for 12 years. And in those 12 years, they've played for a gold every single time. And they've come away with 10 gold medals and two silver medals, which is hella impressive for any athlete, let alone the dedication that it takes to be that consistent for 12 years. And again, that's the roadmap that Ron helped set us on. And then that's the work ethic of the staff and the athletes afterwards to make sure that, we're staying true to who we are.
I mean, looking ahead to LA, bringing another gold in the home country. I mean, talk about pressure. Like y'all have a bit of a dynasty going.
Well, I mean, so that's the funny thing is that as we were going through the process of Paris, those were the questions that we were being asked all the time is, man, are you guys feeling the pressure of having to win three in a row? Or, hey, are you guys talking about this in the locker room about, that you're trying to make history here? Or you guys, is this one of those taboo things that you don't talk about? And I mean, the answer to that is, yeah, we talk about it. Like, we know what we're doing. We know what we're trying to go for. Not only that, but everybody else is talking about it. So, like, for us to say, no, we're not, I mean, that's not being true to ourselves. But the the pressure, to be honest with you, the pressure that I felt as soon as we hit the gold medal game, to me, there was no pressure. It was like we're exactly where we need to be. And I know based off of what we've done in the past that we'll be in a position to win that gold medal. So when people say, are you feeling the pressure for LA? It's like there's no pressure on us anymore. We've already set the record of three straight Paralympic golds. So if we win in LA, that's four in a row. But we also know that even, we won gold in Rio. We knew that there was a bullseye on our back when we went to Tokyo. We won two in a row. The bullseye got bigger while we were in Paris, and we were able to win three in a row. So the bullseye is always going to be there. So to me, there's really no pressure on us going to LA. The pressure is what people think, we deal with. But for us, we're going out there, we're playing basketball. We're just fortunate that in 4 years, we get to do it at home. Our family and friends don't need to travel thousands of miles to see us. They can go to LA and watch us play. And for us, that's the exciting part is that we'll have more fan support in LA than we faced anywhere else. Playing France in the quarterfinal game, it was amazing. Having 12,000 plus French or Parisians cheer against you is awesome. In 2016, when we went to Rio, we opened up the tournament against Brazil. Having 16,000 Brazilians mad at you at the beginning of the game and then be absolutely silent by the end of the first quarter because their team is down by 16, there's no greater feeling in the world. So, flipping the switch and going to LA and having a packed stadium cheering just for you, game in and game out, is going to be absolutely incredible for anybody that's going to be on that team, not just the U.S. men's team, but anybody that's going to be competing, representing the U.S. in LA. And that's the exciting part. Yes, there's going to be pressure because everyone wants to do well at home, but there's nothing like playing in front of family and friends. And hopefully, with your platform, we can increase the Paralympic movement.
Yeah, I mean it's been incredible to see the outreach of the Paralympics. I mean, obviously Paris set some serious Olympic records, but the Paralympic outreach is really cool too. Um, when you're looking at potentially a four-peat on the national stage, how much of your team right now are you planning on retaining going into LA?
That's a wonderful question, and that's a question I was getting asked like minutes after the gold medal game was over, right? Everyone wants to know who's coming back. Are you going to be coaching it again? Is this person coming back? We've officially had one of our athletes that said that Paris was his last game. Steve Serio, who's been the face of our program for well over a decade. He was flag bearer at opening ceremonies for us this year. He's been the captain of our team for longer than I can remember. He came out before Paris and said Paris would be his last games. Um, there's always that draw for people to stick around, especially when games are on home soil. So I have not reached out to anybody on the team to ask them about LA. I want them to enjoy, the gold medal honeymoon that they're in right now. And then they all need to make that decision for themselves in terms of, is coming back for LA something that they want to do? Is that something that their family and friends are going to support? Because it's not an individual decision, it's a family decision. And for some of them, it'll be a 4-year commitment. There's others that'll take the first year or two of the quad off as an opportunity to rest their bodies, to rest their minds, to get a full reset, and then they'll make the decision later on. And they really don't need to make that decision for a while. So I'm a firm believer that if they want to play, they'll be in a position to play. That I'm not going to go out there and beg and ask any of them to come back, because for a lot of them, they've already done everything that they've needed to do. Steve won 3 gold medals. Brian has won 3 gold medals. If he doesn't want to come back for LA, I'm not going to pressure him to come back. Trey is the best defender in the world and will be the best defender until he decides to step away from the national team. And they've all given so much to this program that I don't want to ask them to continue to give unless they're willing to commit to that. We've got plenty of great up and coming athletes here in the States that are eager to make a name for themselves on the national team, on the senior team. A number of them are going to be trying out for the under 23 team here in about a month. So I'm excited to see what some of those guys can do. So who's coming back, who's not coming back? The only name I know for sure that says he's retired is Steve Serio. But hey, he could always change his mind too and be like Michael Jordan, come out of retirement and have a great end of his career. But again, Steve has done so much that he deserves to retire and to go out the way that he did.
What is the age demographic of your roster? Like
So
what are your pinpoints?
yeah, so I mean, our youngest that we had on the team this year was 19 when we got to Paris. He turned 20 on opening ceremonies day, and then the oldest that we had on the team was 45. So we had a pretty wide range. I think that our average age on the team was probably somewhere in the 32, 33, which is one of the older teams that we've had. But again, we had what, 5 or 6 of the guys have been with us for the last 3 Paralympics. So they've grown up together. They've grown together through the sport with the team. So I would imagine that, a few of our guys, our older guys, will retire. We'll bring some younger guys in and we'll kind of start that whole process again of not building a new dynasty, but continuing with the traditions that we've had as a program.
I mean, when you've retained players for over a dozen years, how do you keep things fresh? I mean, it's easy to
Um,
say like in football when in like the NFL when the average player plays 3 years. When you have a an athlete who is in their 40s, has won 3 Paralympic golds, how do you continue to motivate that person?
so I don't know if it's necessarily anything that I do. When you have a group that stayed together as long as we have, it's the family piece. It's the fact that the guys know each other so well. They know their families, their wives, their girlfriends, their kids so well, um, that it just becomes something that they want to do. I don't think you motivate them to try to win a gold medal, but what you do is you play up the fact that we're such a tight group that the relationships that they've built over the last 10 to 12 years are just so important that you want to continue that. And when you get to that point, is no longer about trying to win a gold medal for yourself. It's trying to win a gold medal for your room full of brothers that you've battled for. It's understanding that, the new kid that we have coming in, AJ Fitzpatrick, that just played in his first Paralympic Games. It's understanding that you're trying to help build him up and bring him into this winning culture, so that way when you do feel ready to retire, you've got a kid that you've brought into the family that can then help continue with the foundation, or not even the foundation, but continue us in the same direction that we established 12 years ago. So the motivation piece is winning a gold medal for your teammate. It's being there to, we train once a month, for an extended weekend. It's playing catch up on how things are going back home. In terms of keeping things fresh, it it's tough. It's tough to come up with new drills in wheelchair basketball. It's tough to come up with with different lineups is tough to kind of try to motivate them. And the great part is a lot of them are self-motivated because of the fact that they want to do their best for the guy sitting next to them or the guy sitting across from them. They want to do best for their family back home that has given up a holiday weekend so that way they can come hang out with me and play basketball. Or, for family and friends that they don't see for months on time because they're in the gym training as hard as they can to make sure that they're not going to let down their teammate when they see him the next time. So you don't really keep things fresh, but what you do is you help kind of keep them guided and in the path. And I mean, let's be honest, I've done this for plenty of years. At the very beginning, we'd go to training camps and we'd do 3 sessions a day for 4 days. I mean, you want to talk about tough. Well, the guys have gotten older. The bodies don't put up with that anymore. So now we're doing 2 sessions a day. We've even cut back on the time a little bit. We're more flexible in what we're doing. Now that people are able to do Zoom calls or work remotely, not having to take off as much vacation time. We're flexible with when we have our training sessions to allow guys to work remotely, to not use vacation time. So I think in terms of keeping it fresh, it's just modifying what we're doing, knowing the personnel that you have to get the most out of them in the short time that we have together.
When you were talking about these athletes playing for the national team and then also playing overseas, when you come together as a Paralympic unit from across the world, what is the difference between the representation on the US team versus the ones that you're playing?
So when we play against other Paralympic teams, I would say just about everybody on that other country's Paralympic team is playing professionally somewhere in the European system. Whereas here in the States, we don't have a paid professional league. We've got the National Wheelchair Basketball Association, which has all those different divisions that I talked about earlier, the top one being the Division One. But everyone that plays here in the States have full-time jobs and play more recreationally than anything else, where if you're living overseas, you're getting paid to be a professional athlete. So that is their full-time job is to be over there training in their sport. So when we go and we play, like Great Britain, the gold medal game, or we play the Spanish team in the opening games of the Paralympians, everybody on the roster plays professionally somewhere in Europe. Again, whether it's in the Spanish league, the German league, Italian league, French league, wherever, Turkish league, they're all playing professionally over there. That is their full-time job. Where if you look at our team, Trayvon Jennifer, his full-time job is he works for the Secret Service. Brian Bell, his full-time job is he works for Visa. Um, AJ Fitzpatrick, his full-time job is that he is a student athlete at the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater. John Boy's full-time job is academic advisor at University of Wisconsin-Whitewater. All these guys have full-time jobs that require their 40 plus hours a week, but yet they're finding time, again, taking away from family time to go to the gym, to hit the weights, to do their mental training, to do everything that they need to do. So when we do come together as a unit, they put in all their work at home, trusting that everybody else has, and we can come in and start working on the team aspects of things. So uh, the rest of the world, I don't want to say they have it easier, but their athletes are training every single day, where ours is performing a full-time job and then putting in that extra work. And really for us, that's been the success is the work that guys have done individually to allow us to be successful together. And for the next generation of athletes, that's the work ethic that they have to understand is that it's more than just wanting to be that good. It's the time and the sacrifice that it takes to get to that level and then really to sustain it once you do get to that level.
Yeah, I mean, when you are trying to, I mean, as a spectator, when you look at these elite athletes, you're thinking they're training all the time. Like, this is their life. This is what they do full time. And then you actually ask one probing question, and it's like, no, this is just a piece of what I do. This is not even my part-time job. This
Mhm.
is just something that I do once a week, like once a month. And then
Well,
you trust that your teammates are putting in an effort as well across the country.
right. And that's why you see like in Olympic and Paralympic years, you hear so much about the dedication and sacrifice of the Olympic and Paralympic athletes. How this past year, a number of Olympic athletes were asking for help on GoFundMe because they're having to, if they want to compete at the Olympics, they're having to quit their full-time jobs to be able to take the time off to go compete, or they're having to they can't work full time because they're dedicating themselves to perfecting their craft. Whereas if you look at professional athletes, NBA players, they're getting paid millions of dollars to play basketball. They can take the time off to go over to Paris to win a gold medal over there. But as some of the smaller sports, the less known sports, the ones that we're doing really well in and medaling in, those are the athletes that are sacrificing more than anyone can understand just to make a trip to Paris in the hopes of medaling. There's a lot of sacrifice to be an Olympic and even a Paralympic athlete, let alone champion.
Yeah, and I don't think that when we're watching the Olympics or the Paralympics once a quad, that is really driven home enough.
Not at all. And then you see the documentaries that come out afterwards. I don't know if you saw, and I know Michael Phelps's documentary about the weight of gold was more about the mental health. And at that point, the lack of support from a mental health training. But he's the big name that everybody knows about, right? He's the one that has all the sponsors where he can afford to not work full time and just swim, where it's what about somebody else on the swim team that doesn't have the same name, that hasn't been as successful, that's just getting into it? They're the ones that are sacrificing the most just to try to make that team. And then they have to sacrifice so much more to try to even get on the podium so that way they can hope to get some sort of sponsorship later on. So, I mean, yeah, Olympics and Paralympics, it's incredible for us to watch, but we forget about it in the 3.5 years in between the games that's when those athletes need help the most.
I think it's just fascinating how the difference in allotment of funds and time and energy, even at the most elite level that the US has. I talked to a fair amount of professional athletes for this podcast, and I also talked to a fair amount of national team athletes and coaching staffs, and their perspective on their relationship with their sport is so different depending on what kind of emphasis there is on playing that sport full time. What do you see as the potential for outreach for adapted athletics at an elite level?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the things that we're always chasing is that kind of outreach on a couple of different levels. Like financially, we mentioned that before, but financially, that's one of the hardest things for adapted athletics, whether it's an individual sport or a team sport, is the funding to support that athlete or that team. I mean, we're always, strapped for cash and everything that we're trying to do. We're trying to always do everything as inexpensively as possible. That's always a handcuff of ours. But then the other thing, and this is where I think Paris is starting to help with it as we roll into LA, is the exposure piece. I mean, it's exciting how much coverage the Paralympics got for the Paris Games. And we got a good amount of coverage in Tokyo, which was great because everyone was at home during COVID. But the amount of coverage that we got for the Paralympics during Paris was incredible. Being able to have wheelchair basketball played on NBC or USA live is incredible for our sport. Having the other Paralympic sports that were covered and shown live was great. Having Peacock do all the coverage that they did was awesome. And then on top of that, it was the commercials that you saw that had different Paralympic athletes in there. You know, there are a couple of commercials that one of my guys, Trayvon Jennifer, was in, and in one of those commercials, he had AJ Fitzpatrick, who's a newcomer to our team. I know Jessica Long has done commercials in the past. Tatiana McFadden has done some commercials. Different, other track athletes have had commercials leading up to the Paralympics. So I think for Paralympic sports or adapted sports, it's having that exposure piece. And once it's kind of seen and is seen as mainstream, then everybody is okay with it. And they're like, "Oh, this is great. The Paralympics, I know all about it. This is wonderful. Let's watch the men's team win their fourth consecutive game. Let's go to LA and support these athletes." But even before that, let's figure out a way where we can support our local adapted athletic programs. Figure out a way to support one of the 11 collegiate programs out there. Auburn's a great program to support. Or maybe there's a local team or a juniors team in your area for wheelchair basketball that you can support, or some great organizations out there, whether it's the Lakeshore Foundation in Birmingham or Courage Kenny Foundation up in Minnesota or Ability 360 out in Phoenix. There's places all over the country that offer adapted athletics, not just basketball, but all sorts of sports, swimming, rugby, track and field. That having that kind of exposure from something like this, from commercials on TV, from the Paralympics, hopefully we can get a collegiate wheelchair basketball game on the SEC network or on ESPN, helps drive exposure. And once you have exposure, hopefully that helps with the funding. No different than what the WNBA has been doing over the last several years, the big push to get them televised on TV and having athletes like Caitlin Clark, like Angel Reese that have kind of come up and helped boost the WNBA up. That's the same thing that we need from a wheelchair basketball standpoint and an adapted athletic standpoint is getting those faces out there that can help drive and promote wheelchair basketball or adapted athletics.
What is it about Auburn that has created this kind of mecca of adapted athletics? Like, why Auburn?
Well, I mean, thank you for considering us a mecca of adapted athletics. I don't know if anyone else would agree with you. We've only had an adapted sports program here for 15 years. We pale in comparison to some of the other great colleges that have had programs for a whole lot longer, and programs that have been very successful in what they've done. But here, we've just taken the approach of that we want to build our programs with a solid foundation. So, we've had competitive wheelchair basketball here for about 9 years. We've got a wheelchair tennis team. We just started a power wheelchair soccer team here, and we are very supportive of the USA wheelchair handball team. Now, we don't have an Auburn wheelchair handball team. There is no like club wheelchair handball in the States. It was staff members from my program that helped get the U.S. handball team, wheelchair handball team started. So I wouldn't say we're a mecca for adapted athletics, but what we're trying to do is we're trying to get to that level. We're just trying to be smart about how we're building our programs here. We are putting our student athletes first in everything that we're doing. And Auburn is just an incredible community that is very supportive of everything Auburn. So regardless of whether we are the football team, a very successful basketball team, whether it's Aubie the Tiger, whether it's a robotics team, whether it's bass fishing team, or any other club that we have on campus here, the Auburn family supports the Auburn family regardless of what you're doing, and they do it wholeheartedly. And that's where I think is maybe one of the differences between us and some of the other programs out there is that we have the full support from the university and every alumni that have been through the university, whether they know that we have a program or not, as soon as they hear anything Auburn, they're going to back it 100%. So, yes, we are trying to become the best of the best that we can be in all of those sports, but we have fallen short in all of those sports up to this point. But hopefully, with continuing education, with continuing the outreach, with recruiting in some of the best student athletes that we can bring in, we can get to the point where the success that I've seen on the US level, we can have here at Auburn as well.
Where I know I already asked about the age demographic of the people on your national team. Where are they coming from in the United States? I mean, they're not all living in Auburn.
No, so for the national team, our athletes are spread all across the country. We've got New York, DC, Wisconsin, California. Um, but they're spread all over the country. We've got one that plays professionally over in Spain. And even my coaching staff, they're from all over the country and even all over the world. We've got um, I'm here in Alabama. My assistant coaches in Columbia, Missouri. Another one is over in Germany. My team leader is in Omaha, Nebraska, and our athletic trainer is in Dothan, Alabama. So it's from all over the country. It's not just one spot. Um, but if you take a look at kind of the background of the athletes that are on the team, this past year I'll give them credit. University of Wisconsin Whitewater, there was several members of our team that are graduates of the University of Wisconsin Whitewater. We've got a couple that were graduates from the University of Illinois. University of Texas Arlington was also represented. So it's a mix of all the different universities. And we had one that didn't go to university, and he's actually a wounded warrior. He was a Marine that got injured overseas. So it's from all over. And the great part about it is, if you look at our under 23 team, those kids come from all the different universities as well, and that's where people look at it and say, oh, as you said, Auburn is the Mecca. We didn't have a single one of our student athletes that made the senior national team. Now, several of them have been on the under 23 team in the past and will be trying out for the team here in the future. But it takes a lot to make the senior team, more than just going to the university where the head coach is at. It's learning the system. It's getting an invitation to try out, which is always very difficult to do just with the number of applicants that we have. And then it's earning a spot on the team. And I tell this to recruits all the time, just because I'm the national team coach, or in the past I was the national team assistant coach, it does not guarantee you a spot on the national team. It does not even guarantee you a tryout for the national team. All it does is put you in a position where you're going to learn the system and the expectations that it takes to play on the U.S. team, and then it is up to you to earn both a tryout and earn a spot on the team. And if you're able to do so, you did that on your own merit. You didn't do that because I'm your club coach. And that's, to me, that's the way that it should be on the national team. It should not be given to you because of where you went to school, or because you know who the head coach is, or anything like that. To me, the U.S. team is too important, and what we've done and what we've established is too important to just give it away to somebody because they decided to go to Auburn. And I think it means more too if you earn it.
Of course. I mean, no national team is easy to get on,
It shouldn't
you
be.
know, especially one with as storied a past as you guys have. I mean, I said it earlier, you have a dynasty going, and it doesn't seem like it's ending anytime soon.
Let's hope not. Let's hope not.
When you're looking at your role as head coach and how your coaching philosophy has changed as you've coached in college and then coached on the national team, what did your master's degree and focusing on the counseling side of coaching help to inform with your coaching philosophy?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think my coaching philosophy was really, it started when I started working with Mike Frogley and picked up more stuff from Ron Likens, and just tried to take the good that I could from them. The master's degree, I think, kind of opened my eyes up to other things out there. I mean, Mike and Ron are both phenomenal coaches in the way that they can handle things, and the X's and O's. Um, but my master's degree, so my master's is master's in education with a focus in counseling and psychology. Not so much psychology, but the counseling piece, in terms of being able to connect one-on-one with athletes, trying to figure out how to get the most out of them. And then I said this to the guys when we were in Paris, or even leading up to Paris, like, to me, I like to lead with love, meaning I understand that you're giving me your best effort out there, and I understand when mistakes happen. But it's my job to make sure that I help kind of course correct that. And I'm not the type of coach that's going to sit there and yell at you and berate you. It's going to be more of a conversation that we have, because I feel like if I can connect with you one on one, that's going to drive you to want to perform better. And understand that when you do make a mistake, and we all make mistakes, I've probably already misspoken at some point during this conversation with you. It's understanding that mistakes happen, and instead of sitting there and dwelling on it, we've got to move on and move on to that next play. Because if I'm thinking about something that I said to you 10 minutes ago that I messed up on, it's going to screw up the rest of this great interview that we've got. Same thing in basketball. If I turn the ball over and I'm hard on myself for that, it means that I'm not in a position where I need to be to make a stop on defense. and I'm going to get frustrated at myself for that, which means I'm not going to be in it for the next offensive possession. So mistakes happen. We just need to learn how to minimize those mistakes. Um, and we do that through practice, and we practice hard. So that way, when we get to a game, we're ready to start playing, and we know that when a mistake happens, we're going to move on to the next page. We're going to move on to the next play, and we'll be a better team for it. So, yeah, having that master's degree really helped out. It was a wonderful degree. I went through it actually with Ron Likens. He went through the degree with me. Scott Meyer, who is my assistant coach on the U.S. team, he went through that same degree as well. So it was one of those degrees that we all thought was going to help us all out, and we shared it with each other, and we all went through the program right around the same time. There was overlap between the three of us, and it was a great opportunity for us to collaborate together on different assignments and talking points. And then when we would get together for training camps, be able to actually implement some of the things that we were taught and that we learned. And it has helped me out on the national team. It has helped me out here at Auburn. But more important than that, it has helped me out with every single relationship that I have. The relationship that I have with my wife is a whole lot stronger. The relationship that I have with my kids is a whole lot stronger. But then just anybody else that I have the opportunity to interact with and grow a relationship with, I fall back on things that I've learned in that, on top of interactions that I've had with anyone that I've come across with to try to strengthen those relationships. So while this might be the first time that we've met and we've had a conversation, I want to make sure that we can continue to have some sort of relationship after this where we can both benefit from it, regardless of that what that looks like. And I wasn't joking when I said that you are at the forefront of the Paralympic movement to help get the word out there. So when LA comes around and everybody knows your name because of what you've done, we can follow up in LA and have you there on the sideline and do some one-on-one work there and have a follow-up conversation about stuff because I want you to be successful in everything that you're doing as well. Not,
Yeah,
I mean, not that you're not because you are. It's I want you to get to whatever
totally
that
get
next
it.
level is for you, you know?
I know I was like low key looking at your shirt and I would love a shirt. Like I was like gonna go to like the Auburn website after this interview and like get myself a wheelchair basketball shirt because like I I will have interviews that will be like so appreciative that I've like spoken to them that they'll send me their merch and I'm like, this is incredible. Like I'm supposed to be fangirling you. You're not supposed to
Not
be
a,
fangirling me.
not at all. I will connect with you after this because we don't sell this stuff online, but I'll get your size and I'll send you some stuff and you can wear it
Oh,
proudly during your
fun.
next interview, especially if you interview someone from Tuscaloosa. That is when you should wear the shirt.
Um, is there anything else that you think that I missed talking about? Anything about your coaching, the strategy behind wheelchair basketball? Um, Anything that you think that you'd like to add more context to?
Yeah, there is. I think it's one of those things as you're growing up, not everyone says, "Hey, I want to get into coaching." And then when you do decide that you want to go the route of coaching, there aren't always people out there that are going to support you in what you're trying to do, especially if you're trying to get into something as niche as wheelchair basketball, something where there's a limited amount of jobs. Especially if your goal is the national team. There's the women's team, there's the men's team. And to me, it was always believing in myself and not really listening to what people were saying. Because I had plenty of people that told me, are you sure you want to do this? Maybe you should get a real paying job somewhere to support your family. And it was those type of comments that kept driving me forward because in the back of my mind, I knew what I was capable of. I knew what I wanted to do, where I wanted to go. Now, did I think I was going to end up in Auburn, Alabama? Not at all. But love the fact that I am here. Very fortunate to have found this job or had this job find me. But it was that kind of determination that allowed me to continue to push forward. And then even on the national team, I'd heard plenty of rumblings in the back that people didn't think I should have been an assistant coach. Same sort of thing when I got the head coaching job. And just sticking with it and trusting in yourself and really trusting your core group of people around you, your family, your friends, and the people that really know you the best. those are the ones that are going to help prop you up when there is even just a shadow of doubt. And then when you have the success that you've ultimately envisioned for yourself, that's an opportunity where you can kind of reflect on the path that you've been on. And I talked to my wife about this. We did a great vacation after Paris where we went to Italy as a chance to it was a reward for both of us, more for her for dealing with this stuff for as long as we had. But I told her, I said, I am probably in the best headspace that I've ever been in my life right now. And it's not because, we're drinking wine and having prosciutto on the beach. It was because of everything that we like, yes, yes, yes. It's because everything that I had worked for, everything that we had both worked for over the last 3 years of this quad or 4 years of this quad paid off with that championship there. But it wasn't just that gold medal, it was everything that we did the years before. That I told her, I said, regardless of what happens right now, nobody's going to be able to knock me off of this headspace that I'm in right now. It's a great place for me to be. And when I came back to Auburn, seeing the same sort of energy from my student athletes here makes me very excited for this coming season. The focus that we have with the group here is something that I haven't seen before. And I don't want to take full credit for that, but it was because of the termination from 20 years ago when someone was like, hey, you sure you want to be a wheelchair basketball coach? Like, you're not going to make any money. You got to support your family. That was that little push to help me um, drive to kind of get to where I am today. And I've always had that little chip on my shoulder. And I think it's good to have a chip on your shoulder as long as it propels you forward in a positive light, in a positive direction.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. When I obviously this podcast is mental health focused, but I don't normally talk to a lot of coaches who approach their coaching from a place of psychology, a place of counseling. How does that piece change your relationship with your athletes?
Um, I don't know how to properly answer that because I've kind of always taken that approach with my athletes. I don't know, like I wouldn't know any other approach than to do it that way. But I think that kind of helps maybe set me aside or make me different than other coaches is that I think every coach cares about their athlete from a personal standpoint and wants the best for them. Um, I think just with the education that I have, I can approach it from a different direction. Not everybody's the same. Not everybody wants to be approached the same. So it's understanding how to approach each of them differently. And some of that's from education, but a lot of that's just from dealing with as many athletes as I've had the opportunity to work with over the last 2+ decades. So, I think the degree helps because it allows me to bring subject matter experts in to help with the team. We've got some great sports psychs that we worked with over the years with the US team. Most recently, Adam O'Neill was with the team. Before him, it was Brooke. Before her, it was Dr. Roberta. I mean, we've had a number of great sports psych that have worked with the U.S. team. Here at Auburn, you talked with Ford, Dr. Ford Dyke. He's worked with our team here, and we've had other people that have come in and helped out in different aspects too. So for me, I don't want, I've said it before, I'm not the subject matter expert in anything. I know a little bit about everything, but I make sure that I surround myself with the people that are the subject matter experts. So that way, when something does go sideways, I can handle it up to a point. But then there's somebody else that knows way more than I do. And those are the ones that I want to bring in to help out. My assistant coaches on the national team, I know a lot, but those guys know more than I do, and they can help kind of fill in the gaps of where I fall short. Our athletic trainers, I mean, I know how to stretch. I could probably tape up a finger if I needed to, but those are the guys that know all that stuff. And sports psych, the counseling piece, I've got a background in it. I understand it. I can do a certain amount of it, but then when it gets out of my scope, I've got people that can help me with that, and that can help my athletes or my student athletes with that. And I think that's the important part is knowing enough about a lot of different things, but knowing when to go to the subject matter experts to get your athletes, your student athletes, your staff the help that they need whenever they need that help.
Uh, on that note, like I Thank you so much for coming on. I loved this interview. I think it's going to be just incredible. I mean, the people that I have on this podcast are just like the most incredible people. I'm like forever fans of every single one. Like we're almost at 100 episodes, weekly episodes, and I have had like every time I get off the interview, I'm like, I love you. Good luck with everything.
Where are you based out of?
This is Nashville.
Okay, so you should come down to Auburn for a wheelchair basketball tournament,
I would love to.
and we'll get you decked out in gear. Well, I mean, we've got a college tournament coming up the weekend before Christmas. We've got another
I would
one
love to.
in January. We'll have you come down. I mean, Ron Likens will be here for one of those tournaments. I can introduce you to the best
Amazing.
wheelchair basketball coach of all time. But and just kind of get you involved with it up in Nashville. There's a
Yeah.
juniors program called Able Youth. They've
Oh,
got a wheelchair
sick.
basketball team. Their head coach is my old roommate from college. Her name is Emily Hoskins. She is awesome.
Wait,
Uh,
sorry, what is it called?
Able Youth.
Oh, okay, yeah.
ABLE, it's all capitalized, and then youth is just regular.
Yeah.
Um, but they've got a wheelchair basketball is one of their sports, but then they do a bunch of like outreach stuff and education stuff for the youth there in Nashville. They've got a lot of great donors and supporters. The Nashville Predators are one of their
Yeah.
big supporters. So yeah, I mean they're a great group. We got one of our student athletes here is from Nashville. I mean he's been here. This is his fourth year. But yeah, I mean, he goes home all the time. But I mean, you're close enough. You're like you're
Yeah.
within a couple hour drive. You should definitely
Yeah.
come down to Auburn sometime. And even if it's
Seriously.
not for a
I
tournament,
love it.
I'd love to show you around Auburn. I don't know if you've ever been to Auburn, but
I've
it is
never
an incredible
been, but
place.
there is a massive Auburn presence in Nashville. Like there, the city feels like it's half filled with Auburn alum.
It's crazy.
It's ridiculous. But and
And it
I haven't made the trek down to Alabama yet, but like I would so seriously love to go down.
where'd you go to school?
West Virginia University.
Okay.
Yeah, so I've been in Nashville about a year now and I love it.
That's
I love it.
awesome. Music scene is awesome
Oh,
too.
it's incredible.
Are
Like,
you a country music girl?
yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay, so you're in the right place.
I am exactly in the right place. And like when I'm not doing this podcast, I work in sports broadcasting.
Okay.
So I work with all the pro teams and the college teams around here. And then I travel all over the country to film games as well.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you have any connections with the SEC network?
I work for them.
Well, it would be great. I'm sure I've got a meeting with somebody either later this week or next week. I would love to get either an Auburn, Alabama or an Auburn, Mizzou wheelchair basketball game covered and shown on the SEC network. I love the SEC network, but I don't
Yeah.
need to see Vanderbilt's spring game in the middle of the summer. That's a repeat, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're gonna fill dead time with spring games, why not fill it with a wheelchair basketball game or a couple
Yeah.
wheelchair basketball games again to help us with the exposure that then
Yeah,
at the end
for
of the day
sure.
may help out with our funding.
Yeah, I mean that scheduling programming is above my pay grade.
Hey,
So I'm
that's
not
fair.
going to promise anything. But I mean, I'm a videographer. So like if you guys need any video content produced, like I'll make a trip down.
Hey,
Absolutely.
either that or when I do get it set up, you can come down and do play by play.
Would love that. Like that would be so fun. Like there are I don't normally interview athletes and coaches from this area. Like
Yeah.
I love Zoom because it connects from everywhere. Like I've had athletes on from 7 different national teams, people from all over the country. But like you guys being down in Auburn is so cool to me because you have a really good thing going down there. And I need to
Yep.
get down at
And
some
we're in your backyard too.
heck yeah.
Have you interviewed anyone from Auburn before, whether it's a coach, athlete, former athlete?
So Ford was my introduction to the Auburn adapted athletics environment.
Okay.
And he was so spirited. I was like, can I join the team? Like, how do I get involved?
Right.
And he pitched you so hard. He's like, I'm going next door as soon as we get off. I'm gonna go talk to Rob. Like, um, but
He's a good hype guy for me.
he is a massive hype guy. But I'm so glad that he connected me with you because like I'm all for extended outreach. Like let's just like get you guys in front of as many people as possible. And like the Paralympics having just concluded, Ford just got back from Egypt.
Yep.
Like they won a silver medal over there. That's incredible.
Crazy for a team that wasn't a team like 3 months ago.
I know. He
Yeah.
was like, yeah, we're like crowdfunding to go to Cairo. And
Yep.
we're intending to come back with a gold medal. And I mean, they fell short, but like a silver is still incredible.
Well, so I talked to him before they left. I was like, hey man, like I get that you want to win a gold medal, but like you might want to taper your expectations just a little bit. Like you guys have never played handball before. You've never
Yeah,
been a team. Like I don't want to deter you or the team, but if you're going in and saying gold medal or bust and you guys don't win gold, like that might be devastating for the team. I was like, maybe you should go in just saying, hey, we want a medal. So
yeah,
that way, even if you get a bronze or a silver, like you still hit your goal. But I mean, he was all gun ho for it. And I mean, they definitely, I mean, they surprised the world, but they definitely
yeah.
surprised me too when I watched them play. And I'm super proud of them. And it's funny, um, I've won a couple silver medals myself, and it is one of the worst feelings in the world because and I talked to Ford about this, like you don't win a silver. You lose a gold. Like at least in a bronze, you won that game. If it's a team sport, you won that game to win the bronze. But you're just given a silver because you lost that gold medal game. And he came in and he was like, "Man, now I know exactly what you're talking about." Like I said, "Yeah, but your route is different. Like this was your first team. Like to me, this is the first time the US ever had a team, so the fact that you medaled in general was huge. So you need to celebrate that. But it's like, yeah, it is kind of a bummer because you lost your last game. Now, I'll be honest, and I don't mean to be tooting myself up here, but I've never played for a bronze. In all my years coaching the US team, we've always played for a gold. It was 16 years on a national team. I've got 13 golds and three silvers. So like I wouldn't know what to say to a team if we showed up to a bronze medal game. I mean, it's kind of nice, but yeah, I mean that's just I've just been fortunate with the teams that I've been with, and for him, it was trying to remind him that I mean, you did something bigger than anyone expected, and for that, he should be proud of it.
That statement is incredible that you've never played for a bronze.
Never, we've always played for gold.
That's incredible. All right, I'm gonna see when your episode is coming out. Like I said,
Okay,
I think it'll be a while. If anything happens between now and whatever this date is, just shoot me an email. Um, and I hope you love it. Let's see.
I'm sure you'll do a great job.
You. November 20th is the day that is slated for this episode release. So you have a little over a month.
Okay,
Like I was saying, if anything changes, if we get off this call and you go, oh shoot, I should have told Julia about that. Just include it in an email. I'll include it in the script.
okay.
And otherwise, congratulations.
Thank
You
you.
have a really awesome thing going.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I love being on your podcast. To me, the conversation was it seemed really smooth. So you do a wonderful job, and I hope I say this to other people that I do podcasts with. I hope this is your worst podcast, meaning it only gets better from here for you. So I would love to see you down here at Auburn. I will say this,
Yeah.
we are playing a game against Alabama in Sand Mountain, Alabama, if you know where that is. It's
Mhm.
like right by Huntsville, just north of Huntsville.
Yeah.
So it's a little closer for you.
Yeah,
That's going to
actually,
be on Wednesday, November 13th.
good
I
math.
will send you all the details for that because that's a shorter trip for you to come down.
Yeah.
Uh, an Auburn, Alabama game, regardless of the sport, is always a fun time.
You said November 18th
13th.
or 13.
Yeah.
I'm normally free on Wednesdays, so let's set something up. Sure.
Awesome. Let's do it.
Thank you so much, Rob.
No problem.
I really look forward to putting this episode together. Thanks for hanging out with me and telling the world about how cool y'all are.
Anytime. I'm happy to help out. And if you need me to facilitate, if you want to talk to any other athletes on the Auburn team or the national team, let me know and I'll put you in contact with them.
Thank you so much.
No
Have a
problem.
great day.
Thank
And
you. You too.
we'll offline getting me down to Auburn.